At 52 years old, I survived a major stroke. The trip is already paid for, sweetheart. Just focus on healing, my husband had told me while closing the luggage. They all left my entire family flying out on vacation without me. From my hospital bed, I immediately called my notary. And when they returned, glowing and cheerful, they had no idea a surprise was waiting for them. Sunlight poured gently through the thin curtains of their elegant Atlanta kitchen. Zenaia Sterling, known as Zeni to those closest to her, was preparing breakfast with her usual precision. As she sliced cheese for the grits, she occasionally checked the market reports on her tablet. Her dark hair, tied into a polished bun, now carried subtle streaks of silver. At 52, Zeni looked disciplined and strong, shaped by decades as a top financial strategist. Water ran from the master bathroom. Langston, her husband, was finally awake. Zeni exhaled and placed the third cup of coffee on the marble counter. Their daughter, Solange, was already seated at the gleaming island, lost in her phone. "Mom, can you loan me $1,500 until payday? My agency is delaying my commission, and I need to pay my SoulCycle membership," Solange asked without lifting her eyes. Zeni opened her banking app with practiced ease. Money requests were so normal now that she hardly reacted. "Sent," she replied flatly before going back to the eggs. Langston walked in wearing an old robe, hair damp, the usual exhaustion showing under his eyes. After 28 years of marriage, the once promising history academic had become a weary community college teacher, overshadowed in his own home. "Morning," he murmured. "Langston, remember I can't pick you up later," Zeni said, setting plates down. "Client meeting at 6. Langston sighed, but shrank under her sharp, businesslike stare. "Fine, I'll take Marta." Solange finally looked up. "Speaking of money, Mom, have you thought about helping me with the down payment for the new Escalade? Mine is literally dying." "Solange, we already talked about this," Zeni said, her tone cooling. "I paid for your Cancun trip last month." "But Mom," Solange insisted, "I need a decent car for work. How can I take luxury clients around in a beat-up SUV?" Zeni stared at her daughter silently. Solange reminded her painfully of her younger self, ambitious, confident, but aiming those qualities toward a lifestyle instead of achievements. Despite having a respectable job at a high-end travel agency, she preferred the glamour over the actual labor. "I'll think about it," Zeni finally said, knowing she would eventually give in. She always did. The front door slammed open and her youngest, Akira, burst in. At 25, he was a restless wanderer, 3 jobs in since earning his law degree, now working as a paralegal while dreaming of courtroom drama. "Hey, everyone," he said brightly, kissing Zeni's cheek. "Mom, you're amazing. Thanks for the transfer. I grabbed my files from the old firm. I'm starting at a new place tomorrow." "Already, Akira?" Zeni sighed. "We agreed you'd stay at the last job at least 6 months." "Mom, there was zero growth there. This firm offers real cases, maybe even partnerships someday." He always spoke fast when defending his impulsive choices. Zeni checked the time. "I have to go. I'll be home late." "Management meeting." She gulped the last of her coffee, swept her documents into her leather briefcase, straightened her suit, and headed out. Langston, dishwasher. Solange, water the plants. Akira, take out the recycling. They nodded automatically. Zeni knew she'd end up doing half of it herself later. At the consulting firm on Peachtree Street, Zeni's day was swallowed by pitch meetings, financial projections, and back-to-back calls. After lunch, her nephew's school called about behavioral issues. She promised she'd talk to her sister. Then she handled an overdue loan payment for Akira. The bank had already issued a warning. That evening, packed into the MARTA train, Zeni scrolled through resort ads. An idea had been tugging at her for a week. Maldives. Clear blue water, white sand, overwater villas. The last family vacation had been 3 years ago, and even that was a short Cancun trip because Langston hated flying. They need something special, she thought, staring at the unbelievable views. Akira will find his path. Solange will grow up. Langston and I, maybe we can reconnect. When she got home, the house was empty. A note from Langston lay on the counter. Went to alumni event, back late. The chicken sat frozen. The plants drooped, the recycling overflowed. Zeni quietly handled each task, reheated soup, and opened her laptop. For hours, she calculated budgets, cutting expenses, taking extra work, delaying the bathroom remodel. If she worked 7 days a week for 4 months, they could afford the trip by May dot, and so she began, waking at 5, home by 9 after extra projects. Weekends spent working. Every call from her family was a request. Mom, where are my coats? Zeni, I can't find a clean shirt. Mom, send $50 for an Uber. By February, everything was booked. The villa, flights, insurance, transfers. She reserved the biggest overwater suite, imagining the joy on their faces. When the family gathered, Zeni smiled. I have a surprise. In May, we're spending 2 weeks in the Maldives. Their reactions were explosive. Solange shrieked with excitement. Akira Googled the resort in awe. Even Langston hugged her, a rare gesture. That's incredible, he said. Are we sure we can handle the cost? I've planned everything, Zeni said softly, savoring their happiness, for once feeling like a united family again. The next 2 months flew by in a frenzy of preparation. Solange endlessly bought new swimwear and beach outfits, constantly asking her mother's opinion. Akira enthusiastically researched scuba tours and local attractions. Langston overcoming his fears, read reviews about the flights, and watched videos about the tropical islands, and Zeni worked. The new project proved more complex than she anticipated. Management demanded results. Clients changed the terms. Late-night meetings, stress, constant sleep deprivation. But she endured, knowing that soon they would all be together, happy by the ocean. A week before the trip, Solange approached her with an unexpected request. Mom, can I bring Kofi? You know, the guy I'm dating. He can buy his own ticket. He just needs a spot in our villa. Zeni struggled to control her irritation. Solange, this is a family vacation. Besides, the villa is only designed for 4 people. But Mom, we've been together for 6 months. He's practically family. Solange pouted just as she did when demanding something as a child. No, Zeni said firmly, and that is final. Solange slammed the door. She remained demonstratively silent during dinner. Langston, as usual, tried not to interfere in conflicts between his wife and daughter. Akira was too busy choosing excursions to notice the family drama. 3 days before their flight on a Wednesday, Zeni woke up feeling like her head was filled with lead. Nausea churned in her throat and her right arm tingled. Overworked, she thought, it'll pass. She struggled out of bed, trying not to wake Langston. In the bathroom, Zeni splashed cold water on her face and looked at her reflection. A pale face. Circles under her eyes, new wrinkles that hadn't been there a month ago. It's fine. I'll relax in the Maldives, she thought, opening the medicine cabinet for a pain reliever. She only had to hold on for 3 more days, but fate had other plans. That May morning, Zeni was planning to make a celebratory breakfast. With only 3 days until their flight, she wanted to build anticipation for the vacation. Biscuits and gravy for Langston, pancakes for Solange, and bacon and eggs for Akira, a little bit of everyone's southern favorites. Zeni was meticulously chopping vegetables when she felt the knife slip from her suddenly numb fingers. A strange sensation spread across her entire right arm, then her leg. Zeni tried to lean on the countertop, but her body wouldn't obey. Everything swam before her eyes. Langston, she called out, barely a whisper, but her voice sounded distorted. Alien. Zeni tried to take a step toward the door and collapsed onto the floor, overturning a stool. The crash woke Langston. What the Zeni? He rushed into the kitchen in his unbuttoned pajamas and froze, seeing his wife on the floor. God, what happened? Zeni wanted to answer, but her tongue felt swollen and uncooperative. She could only stare at her husband, trying to convey the fear and pain that had locked her body. Call 911 quickly. Langston frantically searched for his phone, bumping into furniture. Don't move. Everything will be fine. A noise came from Solange's room. What is all that noise so early in the morning? She asked sleepily, peeking out the door. Your mom is sick? Call 911 now, Langston yelled, kneeling beside his wife. Solange, seeing her mother on the floor, pressed her hands to her mouth in horror. Mom, what is it? I don't know. Call the ambulance faster. The next few minutes merged into a blurry scene for Zeni. Frightened screams, hands trying to lift her, Akira's voice rushing into the kitchen. What? How? When did this happen? Consciousness flickered. The ambulance arrived in 12 minutes. A young medic quickly assessed the situation. Looks like a stroke. Immediate hospitalization is necessary, he said calmly, giving instructions to his partner. Who will ride along? I will. Langston stepped forward. She's my wife. Zeni was carefully transferred onto the stretcher. At the last moment, already in the doorway, she found the strength to weakly squeeze Solange's hand as if trying to say, Don't worry, I'll be fine. In the hospital emergency room, everything happened fast. The attending neurologist, a heavy-set woman with a short haircut, quickly examined Zeni. Clear signs of ischemic stroke. Immediate CT scan and transfer to the ICU. Zeni's. Gurney disappeared behind double doors, leaving a distraught Langston in the hallway. He sank into a plastic chair, covering his face with his hands. The phone in his pocket vibrated nonstop. Solange and Akira were demanding updates. The doctor came out 2 hours later. Are you Zenaia Sterling's husband? Yes, Langston jumped up. How is she? Ischemic stroke in the middle cerebral artery territory. Her condition is critical but stable. We administered thrombolytics and performed initial procedures. She's in the ICU now. The next 24 hours are critical. Will she live? Langston's voice trembled. The prognosis is cautiously positive. It's good she was brought in so quickly, but she faces a long and challenging recovery. Right-sided paralysis and impaired speech. The doctor spoke, and Langston felt the ground disappearing. Beneath him, you can see her tomorrow if her condition stays stable. Those were the doctor's last words echoing in. Langston's mind as he walked into the house that evening, drained from hours of waiting rooms and hospital paperwork. Solange and Akira rushed to him the moment he stepped through the door. What did they say? Solange asked, her face pale, eyes swollen from crying. A stroke, Langston answered, pulling off his coat with trembling hands. A severe one? She's in the ICU. Oh my God. Solange whispered. So, now what? Akira asked hesitantly. When will she be discharged? I don't know, son. Langston walked into the kitchen automatically, switching on the kettle. Zeni's fallen knife still lay on the floor. The half-cut vegetables were exactly where she'd left them. It felt like time had frozen in that moment. Akira rubbed his temples. What about the Maldives? Our flight is in 3 days. Both Langston and Solange stared at him. What Maldives? Solange snapped. Are you serious right now? Mom just had a stroke. I know, Akira shot back. But she paid for everything. I'm just asking what we're supposed to do with the tickets and the reservation. Langston slumped into a chair. I don't know. I'll look through the papers later. Maybe we can get a partial refund. The next 3 days passed in hospital corridors. Zeni was moved from the ICU to a standard room, but her condition was far from good. Her right side barely responded. Speaking took everything she had. But she was conscious, something the doctors called a promising sign. On the 4th day, Langston walked into her room with Solange and Akira. Zeni lifted herself slightly when she saw them. Her face looked smaller, somehow drained, distant, fragile. "Hello," she whispered, each sound costing her. "How are you feeling?" Langston sat beside her, holding a leather folder instead of flowers. "Rehab." 6 months, she managed, each word slow and slurred. A heavy silence filled the room. Solange fiddled with the strap of her handbag, the one Zeni had saved up to buy her for her birthday. "Mom, we were talking about the Maldives trip," Solange said cautiously. "Yes." "It must wait," Zeni replied, breathless. "Actually," Langston cleared his throat and couldn't look her in the eye. "Zenaia, we spoke to the travel agent. Canceling or rescheduling means losing almost everything. The money is basically gone." A cold shock rippled through Zeni. "What are you saying?" The words barely formed, but she had to hear it. "The tickets are already paid for," Langston said softly. "You just need to focus on recovery. The kids and I will go. Otherwise, it's just wasted money." He tried to smile, but guilt warped it into something ugly. Zeni stared at them, her paralyzed body heavy, her heart heavier. She had spent months working herself into collapse for this trip, and now they were planning to enjoy it without her. "Will stay with me?" she asked weakly. "We talked to Miss Ruby," Akira answered quickly. "She check in every day. And you have nurses here. You're safe, Mom." Langston placed the folder on the table beside her. "It's the power of attorney. We'll need access to your accounts. For expenses. Excursions are pricey in the Maldives." Zeni looked up at the ceiling as the first tear slid down her cheek. All her sacrifices, decades of giving, saving, working had been for these people. And this was her reward. "Will you sign it?" Langston asked, holding out a pen. Her hand trembled uncontrollably, but she forced it to move, gripping the pen between weak fingers. "Of course," she whispered, writing her name in shaky, broken strokes. What else could she do? In her condition, she couldn't stop them even if she tried. When they left, already discussing what clothes to pack for the trip, Zeni stared at the blooming magnolia tree outside the window. The room hummed with machines, sterile and cold. Life outside continued as if nothing had happened. That evening, Miss Ruby arrived, a warm, round woman in her 70s, holding a bag full of sweet potato pies. "Oh, Zenaia, baby," she cried softly, rushing to her side. "The moment I heard, I came right over." She explained that Langston had hurried past her house, saying they had an emergency trip, and asking her to check on Zeni. "Emergency trip?" Zeni let out a bitter breath. "What a convenient lie. Thank you." "Ruby," she managed. "Nonsense, sweetheart. We're neighbors." Ruby settled into a chair, unpacking pie and sweet tea. "That hospital food can't be keeping you alive." Ruby talked nonstop stories of her grandkids. Neighborhood gossip, little jokes meant to lighten the mood. Zeni listened quietly, but the cold ache inside her didn't fade. The next morning, Nurse Amani Jones walked in, a woman Zeni's age, with gentle eyes that already seemed to understand more than Zeni said. "How are we feeling today, Miss Sterling?" The nurse asked gently as she checked the 4-line. Zeni wanted to say she was fine, but instead her throat tightened and tears poured down her face without warning. "What happened?" the nurse asked, worried, pulling a chair beside the bed. Between broken words and long pauses, Zeni explained everything, the vacation she had saved for. The sudden betrayal of her husband and children leaving for the Maldives while she lay helpless in a hospital bed, and the power of attorney papers she had signed without reading. "I didn't even look at what I signed," she finished, voice trembling. Nurse Amani frowned slightly, picked up the folder, and began reading carefully. Moments later, she sucked in a sharp breath. "Miss Sterling, this is a general power of attorney. This gives them control over all your property, your accounts, your home, your investments, everything." Zeni felt the walls tilt around her. How could they do this? Had they only ever seen her as a source of money all those years? The weight of that realization squeezed her chest until she could barely breathe. "We need to fix this right away," Amani said with sudden determination. "Do you know someone trustworthy? A lawyer? A notary?" Zeni searched through the fog of her memory and thought of Senator Josiah Greena, corporate attorney she had worked with at the bank years ago. They had remained on good terms and exchanged greetings at events. With great effort, she recited his phone number. "Thank you," Zeni whispered. "I don't know what I would have done without you." "Just focus on healing," the nurse said, squeezing her hand. "We'll take care of the rest." That evening, Miss Ruby appeared again, carrying biscuits and a plastic container of sweet tea. "Your folks left for their trip?" she said cheerfully. "I saw the taxi outside your building. They were smiling, loading their suitcases. Your husband told me you encouraged them to go so the tickets wouldn't be wasted. You're such a good woman, thinking of your family even while you're like this." Zeni closed her eyes so Ruby wouldn't see the hurt behind them. "Gave them my blessing? What a convenient lie. Thank you for coming," Zeni said softly. She didn't sleep that night. Hospital sounds drifted through the hall, the beeping monitors, footsteps of nurses, distant chatter. And somewhere far above, an airplane carried her family toward warm beaches and turquoise waters. How did I never see who they were? She wondered, staring at the ceiling. How did I give so much to people who cared so little? For the first time in her life, Zeni felt completely abandoned. And in that lonely room, lit only by a street lamp's glow, a decision formed, one that would change everything. The next morning, as sunlight barely slipped through the blinds, a soft knock sounded. Zeni turned her head with effort. Senator Josiah Green stood in the doorway, a tall, elegant man in his early 60s with neatly groomed silver hair, holding a leather briefcase and a small bouquet of white chrysanthemums. "Good morning, Miss Sterling," he said. "May I come in?" "Of course, Josiah," Zeni replied weakly. "Thank you for coming." He placed the flowers in a water pitcher and sat beside her. His observant eyes took in the room, the absence of personal items. No flowers or signs of recent family visits. "Your nurse explained everything to me," he said calmly. His tone carried no pity, something Zeni deeply appreciated. "I brought the necessary documents." "Where is the power of attorney?" Zeni nodded toward the bedside table. Josiah picked up the folder, scanned its contents, and shook his head. "A full power of attorney, allowing them to handle all your finances and property," he said. "Who drafted this?" "My husband," Zeni managed. "As I suspected," he replied. "There are clear issues with this. First, no proper witness or notarization, which already makes it questionable. And second, it lacks the specific authority descriptions required by law." He opened his briefcase, spreading several forms on the movable table. "We're revoking this immediately. After that, I'll prepare notices for the banks to freeze all transactions on your accounts while we investigate." At that moment, Nurse Amani entered with a tray of tea and crackers. "You two must be starving," she smiled. "How is everything?" "Going? We're restoring fairness," Josiah said warmly, nodding to her. "Miss Sterling," he continued, "which banks do you use? Any safe deposit boxes? Additional properties aside from your main home?" For the next hour, Zeni, with difficulty, answered each question. When long account numbers or legal names became too much to articulate, Nurse Amani helped fill in the details. Josiah wrote carefully, checking every word. "We'll have the revocation filed today," he said firmly when he finished. "And if you're open to advice, I believe your will should also be updated." Zeni hesitated. Her will had been written years before Akira was born, leaving equal shares to her husband and children. She hadn't reviewed it in decades. After a moment, she said with surprising clarity, "Yes, I want to change the will." Josiah studied her face. "Are you certain? This is a major step, especially given your condition." "Precisely," Zeni replied slowly but firmly. "For the first time, I see everything clearly." He nodded. "Very well. Let's outline your wishes." While her family basked in the sun far away without a single call to check on her, Zeni, with the help of her lawyer, revoked the power of attorney and prepared a completely new will. Most of her estate would go to a neurology rehabilitation charity supporting stroke patients. A generous portion was also assigned to Nurse Amani Jones, who had shown more genuine care in a few days than Zeni's family had in years. She even created a scholarship fund for young neuro-rehab specialists. "Are you sure about this?" Josiah asked carefully as he finalized the paperwork. "Absolutely," Zeni said with a steady voice. For the first time in years, she felt relief. She was making decisions for herself, not for people who had abandoned her. When Nurse Amani heard about the inheritance, she shook her head immediately. "Miss Sterling, I can't accept such a thing." "We're just acquaintances," Zeni whispered, her voice slow but firm. "But you're the only one who's shown me real care. Please accept it. It's my way of saying thank you." Josiah Green slipped the signed papers back into his briefcase with practiced precision. "Now," he said, rising to his feet, on to the next steps. "I'll send formal notices to every bank you're affiliated with. I'll freeze any potential real estate dealings, and I'll establish legal protection over your assets throughout your rehabilitation." Zeni exhaled in relief. "Thank you," she murmured. "My pleasure," Josiah replied warmly. "I'll be visiting regularly. We'll monitor everything together." After he left, Nurse Amani helped Zeni shift into a more comfortable position. "How do you feel?" "Strange," Zeni admitted, like I've woken up from a very long sleep." "That's good," the nurse smiled gently. "It means you're starting to recover in more ways than one." That evening, Zeni was drifting off when her phone vibrated. She reached for it with her good hand. Langston's name lit up the screen. With unexpected calm, she answered. "Zeni, it's me," he blurted, agitation thick in his voice. "We're at the airport. Something's wrong with the card. Payment isn't going through. The baggage fees, the resort Wi-Fi, nothing is working." Zeni remained silent. "Are you hearing me?" Langston's voice rose. "We need the money, baby." "The card keeps saying declined." "Of course it does," Zeni said quietly, her tone steady. "The power of attorney was revoked. And I've reevaluated our financial arrangement." "What do you mean reevaluated?" His voice cracked with panic. "Zenaia, we're standing at the airport. We need the money." "You have your own cards and savings," she replied calmly. "Enjoy your vacation on your own dime." "Zeni, you're not thinking clearly." "This is the stroke talking." Langston barked, but she had already ended the call. The phone rang again. And again. Messages piled up from Langston, then Solange. Then Akira. Zeni turned the phone face down and silenced it. For the first time in years, she did not rush to fix other people's crises. The next morning, raised voices echoed down the hallway. Langston was arguing with the duty nurse. "You don't understand. She's my wife. She's made an irrational decision." "Visiting hours are from 4 p.m. to 7 p.m., the nurse replied coolly. "Her chart shows stable improvement. Please return at the proper time." Footsteps retreated. Silence returned. Zeni closed her eyes, letting the quiet settle into her bones. She didn't know whether they had boarded that flight, and shockingly, she didn't care. At noon, Nurse Amani reappeared. "You have a visitor. Should I let him in?" Zani's heart tightened, expecting Langston. But it was Josiah Green who stepped inside. "All documents have been executed," he reported. "The banks have been notified. Your accounts are secured. Your property is protected. Now you can focus on getting well." "What about my family?" Zeni asked. "They flew out," he answered gently. "Your husband used his own credit card for the remaining expenses." Zeni inhaled slowly. There was no pain, only a surprising lightness. "I've contacted a colleague," Josiah continued. "An excellent rehabilitation specialist. He's ready to take over your recovery." "I'm not sure I can afford that right now," Zeni admitted, thinking of her frozen accounts. Josiah shook his head. "You have a separate cash reserve untouched by the POA, and your insurance covers most of the cost." And so began 2 weeks of intense rehabilitation with the same iron, resolve she had once used to build her career. Zeni fought for her speech, her strength, her independence. Nurse Amani stayed at her side, encouraging her through the setbacks, bringing her books on neuroplasticity, reminding her she was stronger than she believed. Dr. Elijah Vance, the Swiss-trained rehabilitation specialist, pushed her even harder. "Listen, Miss Sterling," he said as he guided her through a difficult hand movement exercise. "Your brain is capable of extraordinary recovery, but only if you give it what it needs. Consistency, effort, belief. I can provide the first two. The third," he tapped her shoulder lightly, "is yours to decide." And Zeni decided she would recover not for them, but for herself, every day. Zeni completed every exercise in her rehabilitation plan, forcing her stubborn muscles to obey. With the speech pathologist, she trained her tongue and lungs, repeating complicated tongue twisters until her jaw ached. In the evenings, she read aloud and recorded herself, listening to the small improvements in her voice. Josiah Green continued visiting regularly, guiding her through the legal labyrinth. Together, they moved her accounts to a new bank, changed every password, locked her assets, and prepared documents for the division of property. "Are you absolutely sure about the divorce?" he asked gently one afternoon while filling out yet another form. "Perhaps you should wait until you fully recovered." "No," Zeni answered with unwavering clarity. "It's because I'm physically weak that I need legal protection now, not later." The notary nodded. "Sensible. Very sensible." There were no calls, no messages, no apologies. Her family had gone silent. Sometimes she looked at photos of the Maldives on her foam blue lagoons, white beaches, the sun melting into the ocean, and imagined them lounging, laughing, enjoying the trip she had saved for. Oddly, the thought didn't hurt. Instead, it strengthened her resolve to rebuild her life her own way. The day before their planned return, Zeni was transferred from the hospital to a rehabilitation center. The room was bright and spacious, overlooking a peaceful park. Josiah accompanied her personally, ensuring all the paperwork was flawless. "You'll be comfortable here," he said as he helped her settle in. "And more importantly, you'll receive the best care." Zeni looked at him with deep gratitude. "I don't know how to repay you." "You already have," he said warmly. "With your determination, Miss Sterling, I've seen many people fall apart under stress. You are one of the rare few who grow stronger." That evening, Miss Ruby called in a flustered rush. "Zenaia, honey, I don't know what's going on. Your folks came back from their trip, and they can't get into the condo. The locks have been changed. Langston called me asking if I knew anything. I told him I thought you were still in the hospital." "It's okay, Ruby," Zeni replied calmly. "It's how it's supposed to be. But where will they go? Solange has her own apartment, Zeni reminded her. So does Akira, and Langston can stay with them. Oh, Zenaia. Miss Ruby murmured, bewildered. What happened between you all? Just life, Zeni said softly. Sometimes it teaches its lessons late. An hour later, her phone exploded with a furious ringtone. Langston, Zeni stared at the screen, then finally answered. What is happening? He roared, They won't let us into the house. That is no longer your house, Zeni replied evenly. I filed for divorce. You can stay with the children. Their apartments were bought with my money anyway. Zenaia, you're not well. This is the stroke. You need therapy. On the contrary, she interrupted, her voice steady and strong. For the first time in years, I am myself. And the stroke simply revealed the truth. You can't do this to us. We're your family. Zeni let out a bitter laugh. Family does not abandon someone in the ICU for a vacation. Family does not trick a sick woman into signing a general power of attorney. Family doesn't treat love as a transaction. She exhaled. All the documents are with my lawyer. He'll contact you about the divorce terms. She hung up and powered off her phone. Silence filled the room like a warm blanket. Outside, the sky was fading into pink and gold. Zeni watched the sunset, feeling serene. For the first time in years, she controlled her life. Her future, her choices, the road ahead, rehabilitation, legal battles, rebuilding, would be long. But she knew she would win. That night, she slept deeply. For the first time without medication. No nightmares about betrayal. No fear. She dreamed of an ocean calm, endless, soft waves washing over white sand. She stood on the shore, strong, healthy, free. Dawn painted the horizon in gentle colors, a new day, a new life. And she was ready. 6 months later, sunlight filtered through light curtains. Waking Zeni before her alarm, she had been living in her new studio apartment for half a year, and every morning began with the same feeling, freedom. Her right leg was still stiff when she woke, but it grew stronger every day. She set aside her cane, she didn't use it indoors anymore, and walked to the window. Life outside was vibrant. Mothers pushing strollers, elderly neighbors reading newspapers, runners jogging through the park trails. Zeni and I caught her reflection in the glass and smiled. She had changed inside and out. Her harsh corporate haircut had been replaced with something softer. She no longer wore stiff business suits. Instead, she chose light, flowing clothing. Even her posture had transformed, relaxed but confident. Her phone rang. It was Nurse Imani. Good morning. Her friend chirped. Ready for the big day? As ready as anyone can be, Zeni said with a nervous laugh. Opening your own center is a lot. That's normal. Imani reassured her. I'll pick you up at 10 o'clock. Everything is ready, just the final touches left. After breakfast, Zeni carefully chose her outfit. Today wasn't just another day. It was the opening of the new Life Support Center for Stroke Patients, the organization she and Imani had built from nothing. What began as a small idea, a simple support group, had grown into a real institution with an office, consultants, and big plans for the future. Zeni wore a light blue dress with a wide belt and comfortable low heels. When she looked in the mirror, she noticed something new. Her wrinkles were still there, but her eyes, they were brighter, steadier. She carried a glow no makeup could ever create. The doorbell rang. But instead of cheerful Imani, Akira stood there pale, exhausted, shirt wrinkled. Mom, he said quietly. Can I come in? I need to talk. Zeni stepped aside without a word. They had only met twice in the past 6 months, and both times ended in arguments. What's wrong? She asked once they sat down. Akira clasped his hands. I have problems. I was fired. I've been jobless for 2 weeks. Zeni looked at her son carefully, the dark circles, the unshaven face, the shaking hands. And what do you want from me? I need help, Mom. His voice cracked. I only have enough money for this month's rent. After that, I don't know. Before, Zeni would have rushed to help open her wallet, transfer money, fix everything. But the old Zeni no longer existed. Akira, you're a lawyer. You have a degree. You have experience. So why are you here asking for money instead of guidance or support? What's the difference? He snapped. You always helped. And now, because you're holding a grudge, you've abandoned everyone. Not out of a grudge, Zeni replied calmly. Out of clarity. I finally understood that my help was hurting you. She looked at him with honesty and love. Look at yourself, Akira. You're 26. And you still don't know how to stand on your own? That's cruel, he whispered. It's the truth, she said softly. And deep down, you know it? She placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. I can help you find a job. I have contacts. I can get you interviews. But money? No, that ends today. Because the moment you have my money, your motivation disappears. Akira shot to his feet. You've changed. You've become hard, cold. No, Zeni answered. For the first time in years, I've become myself. You just never noticed because you only saw me as a source, not a person. He laughed, slamming the door, but Zeni didn't collapse like she once would have. She simply breathed, then returned to preparing for the opening. She had work that mattered, work that gave her strength. When Amani arrived, she instantly sensed something had happened. Akira came, Zeni said. He asked for money. I refused, but I offered help finding a job. Amani smiled gently. You did the right thing. I know it wasn't easy. You know, Zeni said thoughtfully, before it would have destroyed me, but now I feel anchored in myself in a way I never did before. When they reached the center, a warm, accessible space designed with care, the first visitors were already gathering. Stroke patients, caregivers, survivors, fighters, a retired math professor with a cane, a daughter who had become a full-time caregiver, a young athlete in a wheelchair, a career stolen by a brain bleed, an elderly couple walking slowly but determinedly. Zeni saw her own journey in each face. The fear, the frustration, the stubborn will to keep going. When everyone settled, Zeni stepped onto the small platform. Her heart trembled, but her voice remained steady. Good afternoon, dear friends, she began. A year ago, I suffered a severe ischemic stroke. That day split my life into before and after. She scanned the room, seeing understanding in their eyes. The stroke took a lot from me, my health, my old life, and my illusions about family. But it also gave me something priceless, a new perspective, true friends, and clarity about what matters. She glanced at Imani with a grateful smile. This center exists because recovery isn't just physical. It's emotional. It's mental. It's community. No one should fight this battle alone. We are here to help you return to a full and meaningful life with new priorities, a new understanding of yourself, and a renewed sense of purpose. We're here to stand with you in the moments of despair and celebrate your small victories every single day. The applause that spread through the room touched Zeni deeply. For the first time, she felt truly seen, not for her wealth, not for her status, but for something she had built with her own hands, something born from her own pain and strength. Later that evening, when most of the guests had left, an unexpected figure appeared at the door, Langston, her ex-husband. He hesitated, unsure whether he even belonged there. When their eyes met, he approached slowly. Hi, he said quietly. Can we talk? Inside a small office, away from the guests, Langston struggled to find words. He looked at Zeni as if seeing her for the first time. You look different, better, stronger. Thank you, she replied gently. You've changed too. After a long silence, he finally confessed, I came to apologize. For everything? For the way we treated you? It was unforgivable. Why now? Zeni asked softly. It's been almost a year. Because I finally understand, he admitted. When you left, I was angry. I told the kids you were confused. Not yourself. But when I had to handle my own life, pay my own bills, solve my own problems, I realized how much you carried and how little we appreciated it. Zeni said nothing, but a warm calm spread inside her. Not because of his apology, but because it proved she had made the right choice. And when I heard about your center, he continued, I realized you're stronger than any of us ever were. Zeni finally spoke, her voice steady. I don't hold anger anymore. What happened needed to happen. It taught all of us. Can we fix things? He asked hopefully. No, she replied honestly. We can't fix the past. But we can build something new only if it's equal. No more sacrificing myself. No more pretending. If you can accept me as I truly am, we can try. Langston nodded quietly. I'll try. If you'll let me. Not a chance, Zeni corrected with a gentle smile. An opportunity. For both of us. When he left, Imani peeked inside. Everything okay? More than okay, Zeni said with a soft smile. Today feels like a new beginning. Walking out into the warm summer evening, Zeni felt the world glowing around her. Lights, voices, movement, everything seemed brighter, more alive. You know what I realized? She said to Imani, sometimes you have to lose what you thought you needed to find what your soul truly needed. Like the old saying, Imani replied, when one door closes, another opens. Exactly, Zeni said. I thought my life ended when that door shut. Turns out, it was only just opening. That night, sitting on her balcony with a cup of tea, Zeni reflected on life's strange twists. She had lost her health, her family in the traditional sense. But she had gained something far more powerful, self-respect. Purpose, a second life dot in every day. When she encouraged stroke patients, she repeated the words that had become her truth. Sometimes you have to lose what you have to find what you truly need. And she meant it because she had lived it. If you enjoyed this story, tell me in the comments. Which city are you listening from? Your support means so much. If you'd like to help me bring more stories like this, you can send a super thanks on your screen. You'll find 2 more inspiring life stories I highly recommend. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next story dot with love and respect.